Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life with Nicola and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Yes, I can.
Oh, I was sitting here looking at the screen that says waiting for the host to join you, waiting for the host to join you, and the host never came.
Oh, well, I've been here since exactly 10 o'clock.
There have been problems with Zoom internationally. Did you know that? It's been hacked and it's owned by the Russians and everybody says we should stop using it or something.
Well, I don't know about being owned by the Russians, but it's certainly been playing up recently. We've been having trouble with sound and delays and all sorts of stuff.
I mean, I've got a weird screen that I don't normally get as well, but never mind, we won't go there. Now, okay. Tell me about your Easter week.
Much the same as usual, Judith, but there have been some things. I watched Gary Vee's been doing some 2 hours every day when he first gets up and ready, and it's been quite marvellous because he's had time to go quite in depth with things. With people, it's Q&A. People call in, and well, in fact, they don't call in; they tweet in, and then his assistant Dustin picks the ones that he thinks Gary can have the most fun with. And there was something the other day that actually made me cry because he was talking to someone who'd been brought up in 3 generations of unemployment, and this chap was working, what he thought was really hard, like 6 to 8 hours a day to keep his wife and child fed and everything. And Gary was A, very sympathetic, but B, booted him up very firmly up the bum by thinking that 6 to 8 hours a day was working hard. And but at the same time, he said, your little boy, how old he is, and they had a little chat about that. And he said, I really want to buy him a PlayStation. And Gary said, well, when you're poor, and you're working really hard to get things going, that's the kind of luxury that goes out the window. He said, but give Dustin your details and we'll send him one. And so it was a mixture of sort of honesty,
tough love.
Yeah, it was just really good, and it actually reduced me to tears. And the second thing that's made me blub this week is Captain Tom and his 12 million. Have you seen that on television?
No.
Or anything? Okay, well, he's an old retired army captain living in a nursing home, and he's been doing it. He's 99 years old, coming up to 100, and he decided he was going to try and raise some money for the NHS by.
Oh yes, he does lengths in his garden, doesn't he?
Yeah, 100 laps of his garden with his walker.
Yes,
and
yes.
He only expected to raise, his aim. I think he was only aiming for £1,000 or something, and he's raised 12 million.
Brilliant.
And I can't even tell you this without blubbing. They had an honour guard for him on the last lap today. So a load of army people came and saluted him as he did the last lap on breakfast TV. It was, oh my God, it was so schmaltzy. But
schmaltzy is the very word that describes breakfast television in a funny sort of way.
Yes, and I don't know why it affected me so much, because normally I'm a little bit hard-bitten and cynical about these things, but I think it's just sometimes you see things that sort of let out all the tension. And I haven't stopped blubbing since 8 o'clock, so I'm going to be a bit of a mess today.
And you love to tell us on this show that you don't blub a lot, funnily enough.
No, I don't blub at the big things, but the little things.
I know, yeah. I just realised that I made that comment about breakfast television, which I've actually never watched. The only thing I know about breakfast television is when I watch the little clips of Philip Schofield and Holly and all his previous partners on YouTube, where they do the bloopers and laugh. That's the only thing I know about breakfast television. So,
well, this is the other side. This is the Piers Morgan side, and on BBC. So I don't know if that makes it any better or worse.
No, it doesn't. Daytime television, honestly, is anathema to me. I don't really understand it because it started at breakfast, as you rightly say. I have to be in every single room in my house at breakfast time. I don't understand how people can watch television. They have it on. They don't watch it. They have it on, don't they?
Yes, they have it on in the background as company and or distraction, and they have it on in every room in the house.
Actually, really dislike that. I really dislike that concept of having it on, because when you go and stay in hotels with people who operate like that, they have the television on in the hotel room where you're staying. It's dreadful.
My ex-husband Irving has always got some sort of sound on in the background.
Yes, strange.
Radio.
Yes.
Radio. And Phoebe's a bit like that as well. She likes to have Jazz FM on in the background in the kitchen. And I said, well, you're not even in the kitchen. She said, yes, I know, but I can hear it, and it makes it feel like it's company.
Yeah, I've worked in offices before in the olden days as an accountant where they had the music on very low. And it depends on the task you're doing, I think, because, if it's loud enough to hear the words and be engaged with your favourite song, there's not much work going on. But if it's down very low, sometimes it's quite nice. I mean, I've worked in offices where they play music all the time, and mostly it hasn't annoyed me, I don't think. But as I've got older, I honestly have to sit here in the mornings and think, do I just want to listen to the silence, or shall I put the 432 music on? Because the 432 music is part of my survival strategy.
Yes.
So it's one of the things I tick off every day. But it's relaxing, but so is the silence.
Yeah, that's true. I actually find it impossible to concentrate if there's any noise going on at all. So when I'm doing things like sums, I definitely have to have silence.
Yeah.
I had to do some spreadsheet jiggery pokery the other day, and I had to just shut all the doors and turn everything off because I just couldn't concentrate at all.
Well, my constant companion is the remote control device, because as soon as I find something that I need my brain for, I have to put the volume off.
Yeah, absolutely. So apart from those two incidents, really, there's been not much news. No news from the BBC on any of the three things, which is still good news. And it's now Easter, gone Easter, but obviously the COVID sort of disrupted their usual routines. They sent out a tweet yesterday for the short 5-minute screenplay that they were starting to send out emails and that people should go and check their email. And, emails of people who've been rejected because they've got, not got through the early stages. And I definitely haven't had one of those. So that's quite exciting. And that's it, really. I mean, it's just been the same, getting up, working, going to watching TV, going on the roof for a drink at sundown, and hanging out with the kids. But it's quite a lot of cooking. I cooked some soup and bread this week. I don't know why I feel compelled to cook bread. It's really very strange. I think it takes me back to when my nanny used to cook bread, and my mum disappeared, and we went to live with my nan.
I mean, if you think about it, a staple of what all civilizations have eaten from the earliest times is bread.
It's weird, though, isn't it? Because I would live next to the co-op.
No, I think it's. What I'm trying to say is, I think it's primeval. I think it's an urge.
I think it must be
a primeval urge, which I don't share.
I do get. No, I know. It's very strange. I've never done it my whole life. Phoebe said, when I was doing it the other night, she said, "What has come over you?"
I know. I don't really like bread. That's why. I mean, when I'm watching MasterChef and they're making these funny foreign little breads, I think, yeah, they look quite nice. Yeah. But a sliced loaf, or even a homemade loaf, or even that smell you get in the supermarket, or even something you have to slice, or even a French stick, not bothered really.
Yeah, I didn't eat it for 3 years in Greece, apart from when I was dipping it in olive oil.
Yeah,
and then I come back and I've eaten more bread in 6 months than I've ever eaten in my life, which we all know is not good because it's carbohydrate.
Well, it's worse than that. It's sort of glue. Well, it is. Yeah. I mean, if you look what goes into it, that's what's going in flour. Grim.
Yeah, you try and get it off your fingers.
I know, and that's in your tummy. It's like wallpaper paste, isn't it?
I know, it's a worry, isn't it? Really, I must stop. No, I think you've actually put me off now with that little.
Well, I think it depends what you have. I mean, there are some delicious breads around, aren't there?
Oh no, it's delicious.
Yeah,
it's just I don't like the thought of the glue that I have on my fingers now sitting in my stomach.
Well, you can do that. You can put yourself off using that strategy with a lot of things. So cauliflower cheese is a delicious thing, but when it goes cold in the bowl, you see actually it's another form of wallpaper paste, which is now gumming up your insides.
Yeah, going up your insides.
Yes.
Going down.
Well, gumming up. Anything with flour in is gumming up.
Okay. Yeah, good one.
And another thing to remember is something that Janet Swift told me. Remember Janet Swift?
Yes, of course I remember.
Janet Swift was always on the surgeon's table for one reason or another. And she did. And she used to quote a Scottish doctor, and excuse me, I'm not very good at Scottish accents, but he used to say, what is it? He used to say, will you stop eating the beige food? The beige food. Beige food is what's bad for us. Well, because he's looking, if he opened up people and he saw that they were eating tomatoes and green peppers and all colourful foods, it would not be gumming up their insides. It's the beige.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I did go for a walk this week as well. So
my word.
I know. I had to go to the Boots to get a prescription. I thought I'm going to do a long way round. Go the long way round the village, I thought.
Is Boots still open? Because I thought I read they were shutting them all down.
No, I hope not. God's sake. No, it's still open. They put plastic screens up, and obviously everyone has to. Our Boots isn't very busy at the best of times, so in fact, funnily enough, our downstairs neighbour works in our Boots, so we've got an insight into what goes on.
Yeah.
And
Be still my beating heart, an insight into
really.
what goes on in the Lashore and Brodge of boots.
And the other most exciting thing is we got a phone call last night saying that our rubbish had been ripped apart in the street. So we had to go down and Nelson had taken the rubbish down. And he
That's
hadn't put
not
it in
good.
the bins. He'd put it outside the door, the naughty thing.
That's a horrible thing, actually.
It wasn't so bad because it was the recycling, but there were our cans of gin and tonic and our bottles of wine exposed for all to see.
I don't think you're very unusual there, so I wouldn't worry about that at all.
No. The woman who'd reported it was actually the daughter of the woman who owns the house. So
as long as she doesn't run the Teetotal Club, you're all right.
Yeah. But that's it. I'm afraid I can't dredge up anything more exciting than that this week.
Oh, well, I think I can, which is good news, isn't it? Yeah. Over the Easter weekend, I woke up in the middle of the night or had a dream in the middle of the night, a realization in the middle of the night that it was Easter time in 1971 that I'd been on the school trip to Rome, which of course is the centre of all activity at Easter. Not if you're a member of the C of E, but if you're a Catholic, Rome is where it's at. Yeah. And we'd gone on a school trip. I was 15. It was 1971. And we stayed in Rome, and then we went to Naples, Sorrento, the Isle of Capri, and Pompeii, which is the volcanic.
I don't think I've ever heard this story.
No, I don't think you have. It's so good, and I remembered all the things that I could remember about it. This is why I think there was a dream involved. So I just woke up and wrote this story up and shared it on Facebook, and with a picture of the Trevi Fountain, which is something that you throw the coin in Rome, and all the things I could remember about 1971, including that I had long hair I could sit on and long legs that went up to my armpits.
Really?
And Sarah, who's a girl I was at school with, who Facebook has brought me back in touch with, then posted a photograph of me in 1971 with hair I could sit on, which frankly was a bit cheeky, to be honest. But lots of people enjoyed it. 50 people enjoyed it, and 18 people commented on it and engaged with me. And one of the things that I shared was that what was top of the pops that weekend. Well, funny enough, I said to you last weekend that Easter's a movable feast, which means it comes on the first Sunday after the first full moon after something or other. It's never the same dates every year. Yeah. And when I looked it up, what weekend was Easter in 1971? It was exactly the same dates as last weekend, which is, I think, a 1 in 4 chance. But the point is, it was kind of, that's weird. And one of the things that I listed and Googled and put in there was what was top of the charts that week, and it was T-Rex. And I quite liked T-Rex in 1971.
Oh, so did I, yeah.
But the person who liked T-Rex even more than me that I shared in this article as well was a girl I was at school with called Sharon, but her name wasn't Sharon, it was Sharon. I'm not altogether, or she had some weird pronunciation. And the only thing I could remember about her was that, well, 2 things. 1, that she was expelled, and 2, that she and I used to play 2 piano duets together. And 2 piano duets is where there's 2 of you and 2 pianos. So you're not both sitting next to each other on 1 piano. You've got 2 pianos. I'm on this one and she's on that one. And therefore you have, and you're always asking me, how long have you been woo-woo? And I said, I think it goes back to being a teenager. And I had this realization that obviously when you're 2 of you and you're not on the same instrument, you're across the room from each other, you've got to have this empathic, energetic connection with the person. Because, in an orchestra, a friend of mine was an orchestral conductor, and another boyfriend used to sneer and say, what is it? Why do we need a conductor? Well, the point is, if you've got 108 musicians to play the same thing at the same time, you've got to follow the baton. And in this, you've got 2 musicians who have to be energetically, telepathically connected so that when you're going to start together, when you're going to end together, who's got the bit now and who hasn't got the bit now. And Sharon and I had this thing. And I've written down here, nothing matches making live music with other people. Nothing in my life has ever come close to when you have the magical moments when you're playing live music with other people. Anyway, this is a long preamble about telling you the exciting good thing, which is, the mad Facebook thing where people want to be my friend has carried on, and now I've got more friends on Facebook than I can shake a stick at, and I don't know who most of them are. So when it comes up and it says their birthdays today, I think, I don't even know who these people are, because of this sort of mad marketing drive that these gurus want these people to do. But in amongst those people, and I don't think it came from the mad marketing drive, 2 people have drawn themselves to my attention in a good way. And I knew that somehow they were interconnected, these 2, but I didn't know how until I asked, because I was going to talk about them both today. And one of them is called Irma Lucia. She's Spanish. Well, she's not anymore. She lives in England, and she's as English as you and I think. But when I went to look at her thing, I realised I didn't know how to pronounce her name. In England, we would call it Irma, which is not a very nice name. But in Italian, Irma is a lovely name.
Oh, yeah.
And her other half is called David Cluter. And they got married in November, I discovered yesterday. But he is a rock music buff. And whenever, both of these two are very good at engaging on Facebook. And so Irma, for instance, is a member of our Facebook, our podcast group. She PMs me, she engages with my content, she replies, she puts comments. She's good at that. Yeah. And David started to reply as well, and he would always reply in song lyrics. Okay. And it turns out that David, which I love a song lyric, turns out that he's got a radio show on Radio Cam. It's called Cam FM, which is Cambridge. And it's called The Rock Show, which I know is not your genre or mine, really. But he's an absolute buff, fount of all knowledge. There were lots of stories about pubs in North London and music venues in North London going back over his life. And so he said, I'm going to play you some glam rock tracks because of the T-Rex mention on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on my show.
Oh, what?
For a link because I was doing 3 things at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, so I couldn't go live. But glam rock, not really my thing, which I fessed up to him afterwards, except for T-Rex, especially when he went on to play Slade and Sweet, neither of whom were my favourite. But he did play a David Bowie track, which was absolutely fine. But this radio show of his, which I listened to yesterday in 2 hours of luxurious thing, Thin Lizzy, Gary Moore, Moody Blues, ZZ Top, Led Zeppelin. I mean, some of them were absolute.
I'm not averse to a bit of ZZ Top.
Well, me neither. I love ZZ Top. But what the brilliant thing was about it, and I could actually almost sang you a ZZ Top then. So, it's fabulous ZZ Top. Anyway, even the Led Zeppelin track was good. I wasn't even really a sort of rock music person either in the Led Zeppelin sense, but he picked the really good Led Zeppelin track. But all the tracks that he played, and I told him this yesterday, he didn't pick the normal chart version. He either picked the album version or the song sung by somebody else, and there was one track by Gary Moore, and I thought, well, that sounds like Queen. Well, then he told the story that Freddie Mercury had picked this guy up in a, not picked him up in that sense, met him in a pub and agreed to be on this track. And so you hear Freddie on vocals and Brian May on guitar, and it's like listening to Queen, but it's not a Queen track, and it never went out as a Queen track. So David Cluter, this is a shout out really for David Cluter and Irma Lucia, who are my new friends on Facebook, and this has all led to me telling this story about Italy and then having 4 tracks played for me on David's weekly radio show called The Rock Show on Cam FM, 8 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Well, that is a marvellous story.
It's a marvellous rambly story, isn't it?
Oh, it's great. And I love it's a bit like when we went to Malta and met Heather's protege in a restaurant.
Well, it's the pop-up, it's Facebook at its finest, that's what it is.
Synchronicity, that's it's synchronicity.
They're lovely friends, but I ended up, because of telling my Italian school trip story, on David's Rock Show on Tuesday night with 4 tracks for me.
Is there? Can we listen online?
Yes, I'll put a link.
Please do. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. He's got a lot of obscure, proper buff knowledge. He's a proper.
I like experts. Experts are brilliant. I've said that many times on this show.
But what's really good, I love that everything he puts on Facebook or even comments on Facebook is in a song lyric.
Nice.
And quite often when I use words, a song lyric comes to mind. He and I are soulmates. Sorry, Irma. I mean, I know you two are together, but David and I are soulmates in terms of music lyrics, but not in our genre of music. Interestingly.
No. When I grew up in Worthing, there were 2 pubs where the trendy people went. There was one pub called The Fountain, and that was where all the dance music and soul people went. And then there was one pub called The Thieves' Kitchen, which is where all the slightly older, rock-orientated and prog rock people went. The people who liked Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, people like that. And we used to always go and visit that pub for one drink in the evening, just to get our cars, and then they'd come and visit our pub for one drink in the evening. It was quite funny.
I've written some notes here because one of the first tracks that he played that I really did like was by a band called Free. Do you remember Free?
I do remember Free, yeah.
And the song was called A Little Bit of Love. A Little Bit of Love. It was really good. Anyway, and he says, that's from their Free at Last 1971 album on vinyl, 33 1/3 RPM, number 13 in the singles charts, number 9 in the album charts. He's a proper buff.
Yeah, real detail.
Yeah.
Marvellous. And funnily enough, I know a prog rock musician now who is used to be in Jethro Tull. and nearly got caught by the coronavirus. David Palmer turned into Dee Palmer, and she was on tour, can you believe this, at 82 or 83, in South America, and nearly got stuck there. They had to do several nifty flights, and it looked like she was going to get stuck there with one of the band members or tour managers.
Well, do you know, if you hadn't mentioned Dee's name, David would have known it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, well, he was known as the Wild Man of Rock.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. Marvelous chef now. Very good cook. Moving swiftly on.
Yes. What's fueled your fire? Be quick, because I was a bit long there.
Oh, well, that's all right. It's great story. I listened to a really good podcast this week called it was actually, the podcast is called Making Sense, and it's with Sam Harris, the famous atheist.
Oh yes.
And he had someone on called Dr. Laurie Santos, who is she studies happiness and cognitive behavior, and she runs one of the most popular courses at Yale ever. And she's also got a podcast herself called the Happiness Lab podcast. And the episode is just absolutely fantastic. It talks about all her studies about what makes people happier, how people perceive happiness. And they just talked about, how to cope with the COVID-19 thing with a view to what will make you happier during this time. And I found it absolutely fascinating and a really good listen. So go and check that out.
Will you send me a link? Can you send me a link so I can put it in the show notes? It's quite a good lead-in for our focus of the week. Do you feel?
It is, isn't it? But
yes,
that was what I fueled my fire this week.
So I'll move along. So we've got some time left for discussing a focus. The post you put on our group over the bank holiday weekend, which was seen by 140 members, resulted in a dialogue with a lot of them. And I'm going to give some more shout-outs. Gwyn, Anita, Linda, Lisa, Bernadette, Paula, Joe Payne, Claire Hanbury, Joe Dodds, Justina, Sabine, Marion, Claire Golding, Richard, Sally, Joe Baker, Irene, Michi and Louise. It seems that lockdown provided an opportunity and the time for them to talk back to us in a lovely way, which is nice because we often feel, don't we, both in the group and on the podcast, that we're just sort of broadcasting into the wind. But when you gave them the chance to chat back to you, they did.
I don't know what provoked me to do it. I just suddenly thought, I wonder how everyone's getting on.
Yeah, well, it was just lovely to hear from the audience. That's what fueled my fire this week.
No, it was great. You're right. I really enjoyed it too. Okay, so on to focus of the week then.
Yes, which I'm calling Reinventing Yourself. Does that work?
I like it, yes, very good. So this came about because every week we have a little chat, don't we? Usually it's about Tuesday, and Judith comes.
Well, do you know what's weird? About a month ago, we had a whole list of shows we wanted to do, and then we completely ran out of topics. And then we'd done 3 COVID episodes back to back, and I said, "Oh, please, I can't talk about the virus anymore. No. Have you got an idea?" And you had, which was good.
I know, it's astonishing. So what was I think what it was part of what the podcast I've been listening to this week, we were just talking that I was just thinking about how much I've enjoyed plunging into the world of screenwriting, and I said to you, can we talk about because there's going to be a lot of people who for one reason or other either will have to or will want to reinvent themselves at a stage in life when they didn't necessarily feel they had to. And I was thinking, I've done this several times, and I asked you, and you came up with a fabulous example of it. So what I want to do is just talk about why one would want to reinvent oneself, how one would go about it, what you would do to get started with something different, and where you'd start, and just try and give people some practical tips.
Yeah. Let's go with your first question. Why? Why would anybody want to reinvent themselves? Straight away came to my mind was like boredom.
Yeah,
I'm bored with my first career or my second career or my current career, whatever it is.
Most people stick it out, though, don't they?
I think it looks like that. I'm not sure that's true. We know lots of people who've pivoted many times, don't we? Yeah. So I think boredom. The second one is I'm flogging a dead horse here because this is something that worked in the olden days but doesn't anymore.
Yes.
When I say olden days, it could have been last decade. It doesn't have to be when I was a child, I think that's one reason. And I think the third reason, which is very prevalent at the moment, and I'm sure there are more reasons than this, but this interregnum, I meant to look that up before the show to make sure it means what I think it does. This gap where we're sitting at home, contemplating the meaning of life, seems to provide a unique opportunity for that if people want to grab it. And when we were chatting yesterday, it reminded me of the people who, on the day of 9/11, went missing through choice. They saw an opportunity to change their lives, and they just went missing and never came home.
Oh, that's, I mean, such a terrible thing to do. But
It is an
what
awful
lives
thing to
they
do.
must have been living.
Well, exactly. Imagine you were living a life. It could be, let's say, something like domestic violence or something. I don't know what it is, but maybe people had been planning to change their lives, and the moment came and they grabbed it. I mean, you could make a movie. Well, let me give it to you as a screenplay opportunity.
Oh, gorgeous topic.
Yeah,
absolutely, yes. I'm writing it down, Judith. Right?
Good. But the point is, that's what provoked your bringing this up as a focus, wasn't it? Is that we're in a place where that's the sort of thoughts that people have.
And usually people are so busy and so based in routine.
Yeah.
They're running on autopilot. So now not only have they got time to do things, well, to think about things and to really evaluate things, but they're not having to do that daily commute. They're not having to hang out, go for lunch with all their people. They've got time to think. And the time that I had to think was when I was, I just moved from London with Irving and the kids into Sarah's house because we were having a financial meltdown as usual. And I say as usual, it's one of the first ones, the big ones. And I was on the train for 2 hours each way every day. So I had time to think, whereas with two small children, you don't really get much time to think. And I was able to not only think, but put into action the things I was thinking about because I had that time on the train. You have a table in front of you. You can read, you can make notes, you can write. And I was thinking a lot of people have not only got the time to think, they've got the time to evaluate whether that life was, making them happy, serving their lives. And now they're spending time with their family. That's either a good or a bad thing, depending on what your situation is. And they've not only that, but they've got time to do something about it now. And they've got time to learn. They've got time to go online and find out that everything's free if you want it to be, and you can actually learn anything you want to nowadays. And I just wondered, have you ever done it, and how do you go about it?
I think I'm hovering on the brink of doing it again, as you know. Yeah. But the one that seemed the most pertinent yesterday is when I stopped being an accountant in 1997 and started being a coach in 2002. And I was very lucky, and I'm not sure. I think this is what people think they've got to do, and I did it by accident. What I did was I sold the business for a six-figure sum.
Tell us first about the business and what made you sell it.
I accidentally started it. So first of all, I was a secretary. Then I went to be a secretary to a firm of accountants. It just felt like coming home. Then I studied in the evening at night school, and then I got the sack, and then I went out on my own, and then it was me, and then it was me and Penny, and then it was me and Penny and somebody else. It just grew like Topsy to 6 of us, 250 clients, and office premises. And what happened was what my brother used to call the tail wag the dog, which was by the time you paid all the overheads and you've paid all the people and you've dealt with all of the issues of being a manager, which I never liked, you make as much profit as if you'd done all the work yourself in the first place. And of course it's more accurate and more enjoyable. So and actually what was the pivotal point was that Penny's husband was headhunted by Asda, and they went to live in Yorkshire. So my right-hand woman wasn't there anymore. And it was a much harder thing to do without my right-hand woman. And so my first thought, because I was a bit mad by then, was, I'll tell you what we'll do, let all the clients know, and we'll let all the staff go, apart from Victoria, who was my new right-hand woman. And Victoria and I will spend 6 months in these offices helping the clients find new accountants and transferring the information over. And then I went, oh, hang on a minute, or I could sell it. So I put it up with a business transfer agent, and something like a September, and Richard was running it by the following March. And it's still there in Clapham today, which makes me very proud, next door to the travel agency I also started. Now, so I had this money, which meant I didn't have to work for a bit. And so I became the laughingstock of all my friends, because I went on all of these courses to discover what I wanted to do next. And nothing spoke to me until I went on a Coach Phil gig with Thomas Leonard in September 2002. And I hadn't not worked for 5 years. I'd done a little bit of accounting part-time. I kept 3 clients when I sold the business. And by the time I found coaching in September 2002, so 5 years later, it was up to 14, because some people didn't like the new people, and the new people weren't prepared to look after my biggest client, and my beautician didn't want to go with them, and it was like, it's all right. So people have prevailed on me to take them back. And I didn't really want to keep doing any accounting. And the last day I ever did any accounting was the 28th of February, 2007, having sold the business in 1997. So it took me another 10 years to get to the place where the coaching was doing so well that it was easy to say to these 14, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it anymore. But the reason why it was easy to change careers is because I had money in the bank. Yeah. So what I think makes it look difficult for people to change careers is mostly we don't have money in the bank. And I think people think they're going to do that. So a lot of clients say to me, I'm going to build up this business so that I can do that business. And I always go, why don't we go straight to the one you want to do? Yeah. And that feels impossible.
Yes, it's so weird that I hear that a lot as well. It's almost like they think that the thing they love isn't going to make the money.
Yeah.
But then we know that doing the thing you don't love is never going to make you any money.
I know. And when I can persuade them to do it, give up teaching to become an artist or whatever it is, they're amazed by how quickly that works and works better. And actually, when Louise came on, she told us she was giving up the CV business to become an artist. Do you remember? And it happened phenomenally quickly.
Yeah. But we're not talking now about people who know what they want to do necessarily, are we? We're talking about people who don't know what they could do.
Well, do you know, I think most people do know, but they daren't say. Either they know, or I've only met like 2 people who didn't know, and that's out of like 1,000 people, maybe more in the coaching. Only 2 people didn't know, and I think the ones that won't tell me are because they hold this thing they really, really, really want to do in a very special place, and they don't want to tell me in case I poo-poo it. Which I have done in my time, and not necessarily with the intent of being cruel. I think we hold that it's a secret dream. It's a secret dream.
So tell us a bit more about how you went. How did you know that going to conferences and training things could give you and which ones did you go to?
Oh, I went to loads. I mean, I really was the laughing stock of my friends, really. What are you studying this week? And I didn't care. I don't really care what, like you always say, I don't really care what, if I'm on a mission, I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it. I think also I was only, how old was I in 97? 97, I was 42. I was quite young. And I had an enthusiasm for a lot of things in life that I'd never had a chance to pursue in the 20 years of running the business because it was all consuming. So I remember wine tasting, public speaking, speaking circles, which I loved. I can't remember now. I looked at counselling. I couldn't bear it because it's all about misery. Yeah. And I can't remember now, Nicola. There are hundreds of them.
You were definitely looking for another career then?
Well, I was 42.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I didn't sell the business for enough money never to work again. I just sold the business for enough money to have a space. Well, 5 years, you know. And so I was in London, and you could go to all these brilliant places in London. Like I was walking distance from the City Lit, which I've probably been to everything the City Lit's ever done. And also I was doing hobbies as well. So line dancing and singing, a cappella singing, gospel choir singing. I knew careers weren't in there. I was trying to work out, it was a golden 5 years, 97 to 2002. I can't remember what the economy was doing. I was living in Marylebone High Street in the West End in London. I got a new boyfriend. It was a golden time, and I felt anything was possible. And then I remember going on holiday to France in 2002 and saying I'd like to be able to earn in sterling and spend in dollars and euros because that's the way the economy was then. And the 2 girls who were our hostesses, landladies over there said, well, surely accountants don't need to go into the office. And I go, no, they don't need to go into the office, but the clients want you to come in. And then Dan, the computer man, you remember Dan?
Yes.
He used to send me these emails when we were working together saying, stop being so interesting. That's why they want you to come in here. You'll never get out of here if you don't stop being so interesting. Be a grey accountant, and then they'd be happy for you to work at home. So what people, my brother used to say this as well, it wasn't really accounting they bought from me. It was coaching quite often. And that's what made me realise that they liked me to listen to them, to share with them the experiences of my other clients. And I realized I could actually do all of the things I was naturally good at without having to do their VAT return at the same time.
Did you have a specific moment when you thought, yes, coaching's for me?
Yeah, Thomas Leonard that weekend. You remember that venue that we ended up using a lot that I really liked, which was the Cavendish Conference Centre, where they were all ranged up the levels in a big white sort of semicircle. That's where I met him, and there was a packed room for one of his gigs. And this is an awful story where I went up to him at the interval. I said, I'm so sorry to have to ask you this question, and I'm really embarrassed to ask you this question. But I thought that if you wanted to be a coach, you'd need to be an exceptional human being. What are all these ordinary people doing in the room? And he said, ordinary people need ordinary coaches.
Oh.
What people don't want is a coach that's so far ahead of them. Steve said it to me once at Gatwick. He said, I hope one day I'll be good enough to be coached by you.
Wow.
People feel they have to earn the entitlement to be coached by somebody who they think is too far ahead of them in their own development. People are very shy, circumspect. Not many people are very ambitious in this world, are they? They're content and happy with just a little stretch.
That's interesting, isn't it? But
yeah,
one always imagines that people wouldn't want to pay for just a little stretch.
Well, we do, because look at the type of people we are.
Well, we look on it as investing in a business.
No, I think we're ambitious and driven.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But we also look on paying for help as investing in our business. Whereas a lot of people don't even have a business to invest in, do they? They're a lot of people.
I think you do, and I think investing is a word we've all been taught to use because it helps them justify the expense.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't really think of it like that. I think that, I can have anything I want. I don't really need an excuse. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think most people are much shyer and more circumspect and don't really want to share their dreams with other people. So I do think those people are sitting at home now with this opportunity to think and feel. I think there's a strong sense you can get on social media of us all not wanting to go back to the old normal. But do you know what? Oh, not 90% of us will go back to the old normal.
Yeah.
Because it's so comforting.
Well, routine.
Yeah, what you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is when you change your life, nobody else likes it. You break out. And then you oblige everybody around you to consider, oh, God, look at that person. I should be doing that. I wish I was doing that. And that's uncomfortable.
Yes, and also they also want to have an opinion because they want to keep you safe.
Yes, they do want to keep you safe, definitely.
All that to overcome.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I know how I did it. I mean, when I started writing with the ladies, who I had a not very successful Zoom call with again yesterday because the sound was so bad, and I had no really idea that I was going to be able to write anything at all creatively because I'd done so many years of commercial writing, and then I was listening. I was editing an episode of the Right Club. I think it was episode 57, and the Right Club podcast. And I was listening. I hadn't been in on this interview, and I was listening to this chap who writes for television. And I remember thinking, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And then I just started watching Preacher on television, which is an American series, which is fantastic and so creative and so different. And I looked up script for Preacher, and I found that you could actually buy scripts online. So then I looked up a script for American Gods, which I also liked, which led me to Neil Gaiman, who is a fantastic writer. And I just started getting deeper and deeper into it. And you start to recognize names. And then I started to follow those writers on Twitter and see what they were tweeting. And then you become alerted to their books and you start reading their books. And I started to notice on television shows that I enjoyed the writers' names, and then I started looking them up and following them on Twitter and looking at their websites and things. And then I started noticing production companies, and then I started noticing the same names, like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, for example, started coming up again and again, and the Williams brothers, who just wrote Liar, among other things. And I started noticing that there were real players, and there were certain production companies like Red Productions in Manchester who take chances on new writers and who accept submissions from new writers. And I thought, because otherwise up to that point, I'd always thought, you have to go to Hollywood or something. You have to, if you're going to be a screenwriter, you have to be 20 years old and ready to move to Hollywood. But then I started listening to Sam and Jim Goes to Hollywood podcast. I started realizing, yes, that's how it works in America, but it's becoming less and less so. And then I just started finding out about the BBC. I started finding about competitions you can enter as a writer. I always knew there were competitions for writers. I didn't know there were competitions for screenwriters. And then the BBC started putting up things that I started thinking, I could enter that. And so it was a gradual sort of research project that grew and grew and grew. And this is how I know it's different to everything else, because I get very big enthusiasms about things. which you have to suffer through listening to.
Well, actually, I was going to say something nice. I was going to say the good thing about you is that you don't get stuck in research. If it's a goer, you convert that into action quite quickly.
Well, I do, and I'd started as soon as I saw what a screenplay looked like, I started writing them because I had ideas, but I had no way to get them out of my head onto. And screenplays give me a fantastic vehicle to get my ideas out, because you don't have to do all the stuff around it that I found so laborious with actual writing, creative writing like books and things. And funnily enough, writing the screenplays released me, so I started going back to my book with renewed enthusiasm, because writing is creative and it gets your creative juices going, and you start to become creative in other ways. It's like some people find that they can go and take photographs and then come back and write and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would definitely recommend that if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, I'd like to do something different now, and now is the time for me to start finding out how I could go about it. I would not whenever I suggest things to people, sometimes they go, I couldn't do that because I don't know how to do that. And I think if you just think, you remember Mark Forster, I'll just get the file out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing to do, is just start typing stuff into Google search. You'll find the websites, you'll find the people, you'll find...
I think there's another issue here, which is what makes people like you and me think it's all right to change our careers and other people not?
Well, I think because in the past I've changed my career because the one I've been doing hasn't worked. I've always had an inner sense that I had something to offer, but I haven't ever found the right vehicle for it. Until I found coaching in the Money Gym, I never had any sense that I was good at something. And I knew I was good at something inside me. I just couldn't find out what it was. And I'm still not convinced I've found it.
You see, the thing is, I don't think any of us are good at anything at the beginning, are we? So we've got to be prepared to start as novices.
And that's very hard for grown-ups.
Yeah, well, it is hard. I think that is hard.
I've got this innate enjoyment of learning, and I think you have too. You like learning new stuff. You like your brain to be active. Lots of people find learning quite daunting as adults.
I don't know that everything they might want to change to requires learning, but I do think it requires kind of the cheek of old Nick a bit of chutzpah, a bit of daring, a bit of I've got nothing to lose. It's a bit like when you leave any kind of relationship, whether it's a job or a relationship where there's a final straw. A final straw is quite a useful thing. So that's it, I can't do that anymore. Yeah. So sometimes in career things, it could be you get the sack.
Yeah, that's the final straw.
Yeah, or you're furloughed and they don't want you back.
Yeah. Or you're furloughed and you don't want to go back.
Yes, absolutely. I think that one takes more balls, to be honest.
Yeah, and the thing is, at the moment, people are, and you know, we've had this thing where you end up with no money, and the world doesn't end. You think the world's going to end, but it doesn't end, and somehow you find a way through that. You find a way to pay just for your groceries and not pay your debts perhaps for a while, and you negotiate with people that you never thought you'd have the balls to negotiate with, because you've got no choice. And I think that is a very, very freeing place to be at ground zero. And if you are at ground zero right now, try and think of it. I know it feels absolutely tragic and terrible and like it's the end of the world, but try and think of it as this is your opportunity to reinvent yourself. Because nobody's going to... I remember one of my mentors said to me once when I was going through the hell of trying to sell that hotel, he said, they all stop at 5 o'clock on Friday, have a lovely weekend. Everybody who is ringing you and writing to you and you feel scared of and you feel is after you, they all go home at 5 o'clock and they don't think about Nicola Cairncross anymore. They just go home and don't think about you. So you don't have to think about them. And he said, they're not going to come around and shoot you. You don't owe the mafia any money. All you owe is big corporations with employees who don't think about you over the weekend.
And who've got plenty of money.
Yeah, and who've got plenty of money and who actually factor in the risk of some people like you getting it wrong and not being able to pay them. So it was really freeing for me, because when I realised that nobody was going to come around and shoot me because I owed them money, as I hadn't been stupid enough to borrow off the mafia, I was able to start again and start rebuilding my life, because you have to, you've got no choice.
Let's have a think. I got a flash of Nicola Bird when you were talking there. Let's have a think of people who we know.
Oh, yeah.
Because Nicola Bird, we knew her first as a coach, and she set up that thing called Jigsaw Box, and she sold that to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then she got into the 3 Ps with Michael, and then she thought she would design websites, and now she makes gorgeous cakes. Who can you think of that doesn't hesitate to reinvent themselves whenever they feel like it?
I mean, normally I would say that people like that, and I've got to say, lots of people in the multi-level marketing world are like that. You know, they pop up and they're doing something completely different. Nicola's different because she seems to evolve gradually into the next thing, and she doesn't stop doing the other things, does she? I mean, she's still coaching during the 3 Ps, and she's still doing websites, but she made it very clear and plain how she did websites.
I don't know that she does websites anymore. I think websites were swapped for cakes. But the point is, both of them are sort of creative iterations of her, in a way.
Make as much money out of cakes as you can out of websites. I know.
If there's a way to do it, Nicola Bird would have found it. That's the point, isn't it?
She's now growing roses. She's turning her rose garden.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And I think some people get impatient with people like that because they think, well, you just sit still and be something. Stop being such a wiggly thing that we can't get a handle on. But actually, who cares what other people think? I suppose it's that. I think that if you are, let's say, the worst case scenario would be being a wife, a mother, a daughter, and a friend, and somebody with multi-textured relationships where nobody in that network wanted you to change. Because actually, I'm sure there are people in Nicola Bird's life who said to her,
"Oh, for God's sake!"
Yeah, exactly. Tut. Yeah. Tut. It's a bit like how often I move house. People used to say, God, I've run out of Tipex. Look, I can't have you on the J or the M page anymore. I've got to put you under X or something. Do you know what I mean? Who cares what other people think and say, quote unquote, jokingly? I think it's about, what's it going to take for you to make a change?
Yeah.
If you want to. I tell you what, Nicola, everybody I'm talking to is thinking philosophical thoughts, but they're not doing anything very different yet. And I think that's right. I don't think this space is something to rush into change unless you already knew you were quite well advanced in the thinking. I think it's the opportunity to think and think, now do I want to go back to normal? And if I'm not going to go back to normal, how am I going to prevent myself from just sort of sliding back into it? Because we have these thoughts when we're on holiday, don't we? It's like, when I go home, I'm going to be a different person.
Absolutely right. This is like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. You get the space to think about stuff when you're in sunbed reading a trashy novel.
Yes.
Attention.
And you're not really thinking, you're feeling. You're allowing your body for these things that you suppress with your logical brain to rise up.
Yeah.
And when they rise up to a certain level, they won't go back down again.
Yeah. Interesting.
A friend of mine, let me tell you the story about Mary, who was always used to, when we talked about feelings, she said, we don't do feelings in my family. What we do is we lift up the corner of the carpet, we put them underneath there, and we bang them down with nails. And if they come up again, we bang them down with more nails. And I think that's what people do with their dreams, their hopes and dreams. They bury them, and because they think they can't have them, which would be a terrible disappointment. You often say that. You say, I don't want to be disappointed.
Yes.
So we're protecting ourselves from disappointment. Well, so what are we saying, really? If you feel like you want to change, we would love you to change. And if you need help, come and tell us in the group what you'd like to change too. Even funny fantasies, let's hear those too.
Yeah, even if it's practically, how would you go about finding the right people to connect with and things?
Yeah.
I'm really good at that.
You did say to me yesterday, this is about research, and I went, I'm not a very good researcher, actually. Yeah. I think for some people it is about research, but don't get stuck there.
Oh, I'm a terrible researcher when it comes to detail. What I'm good at is big picture research and making contacts with people.
Yeah.
I'm on.
But that's your operating system where you think that's going to work for you to make the changes you want to. I think other people probably, we might, depending on their personality types or their profiles or their situation, it might be a different route. I think the point is there are a gazillion routes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your word of the week?
Logic. Because I was listening to, the thing I love about Sam Harris and people like that doctor I listened to the other day, I love people, and what's his name, Jordan Peterson. I love people who are logical and who refute people's arguments by using logic rather than emotion. And I think that's because it's the exact opposite to how I am. And I was reminded of the word because Steve Bartlett said the other day, logic beats intelligence sometimes, because really intelligent people can be illogical. And Sam Harris, for example, and Jordan Peterson and people like that are very logical. So that's why it's
Okay.
my word.
Yeah, and mine is identity, because I think that focus of the week about reinventing yourself, it's about what do I call myself if I'm not this anymore.
Oh, yeah, people do get their identity from their work.
Exactly. If I'm not, when people say to me, "What do you do?" and I'm not an accountant anymore, but I haven't found my new career yet. What am I going to call myself? How am I going to answer that question? Who cares again? It's identity. How do you want to think of yourself? I think.
Yeah. Project updates?
No.
I've got a new website coming along.
Yes. You won't tell us the name yet, will you?
No. It's been marinating for a little while, and I didn't want to jump in too quick, unusually for me. But I'm getting there now. I'll be there in the next week, I think.
Okay.
Okay, and who or what's impressed?
Do you want to go first?
You're going to. I don't know why this caught my attention. I came across a chap called Jack Sim, S-I-M, and he is passionate about toilets and about how a lot of people in the world don't have the dignity and privacy to be able to do the things we all need to do. And he invented the World Toilet Organization. He's a multi-millionaire Chinese chap, I think. And he's also invented the World Toilet College, where people get, in India particularly, he's a Chinese chap who works in India. And a lot of people are being trained by him to appropriately dispose of what needs to be disposed of in a way that's not going to endanger their health and that of their family. And his website is worldtoilet.org. If you want to go and check out what he's doing some very worthy work. And I don't know why that caught my attention, but it did.
Okay.
And you?
And two members of the Morgan family. Me, first of all. I think last week I was what impressed me last week as well. Having to be reasonably self-sufficient during lockdown, I fixed my own computer glitch. I had the black screen of death on my Surface Pro over the weekend. And instead of waiting till Tuesday when Eric was in his office, I just Googled, how do you fix the black screen of death on a Surface Pro? Followed the instructions and it worked.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant.
Isn't that brilliant? I couldn't Google the solution on my Surface Pro because I had the black screen of death. So that only worked because I had an iPad. Excellent. Yeah. And yesterday a marvellous thing happened. Gareth, my middle nephew, who works for an advertising agency, and in a pair, how advertising agencies work is you create the ideas together, and then one's the words and one's the pictures, and Gareth is the words. He's made an advert this week from home, excuse me, which I've seen on television. It's for the Co-op, and you see the Co-op people all speaking to the screen like they're on a Zoom thing, because they're speaking to them remotely because they're socially distanced, or whatever the word would be. And it's about the Co-op. The theme of the Co-op advert is about, I think, Food Share, which I think is a food bank charity, but it features Fish, who's the cat, Gareth's cat that I looked after a year ago. Right. I'd already seen the advert live on telly before I knew it was Gareth. And then yesterday he sent me a YouTube link. And then last night, in the middle of last night's television, I saw it live, which made me so proud and was quite thrilling. It's like I'm watching the telly and I go, oh, my nephew made that. And I know he does this all the time, but making an advert by yourself from home during lockdown, which then goes on national television, is quite an achievement.
I spent a lot of time on your nephew's website. Business website.
Yeah.
He won an award. They won an award, didn't they?
They are, yeah. And he's such a creative little critter. And, the rest of my family, they all have jobs, but he's such a creative little thing. And, I'm such a proud auntie. And I discovered this yesterday on his second checkup of me during lockdown. He's such a sweetheart as well, which is, these emails to make sure that I'm all right. And pictures of Fish and everything. He's just a lovely, lovely, lovely boy. But that you could carry on doing your job from home as an advertising person, with all this split screen work, and then that's being broadcast on ITV in the middle of quiz or whatever it was I was watching last night.
Quality, to go on.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, I think it's good enough, but I don't think it's great quality. It's lockdown quality. They normally they make those sort of Travelodge adverts with what's his name in them. What's his name? Lenny Henry. That's a huge shoot with lots of people. But the fact that he can do this on his computer at home and then presumably upload it somewhere where they run it on mainstream telly is very exciting, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's marvellous. Well done, you.
Yeah, proud auntie of Gareth.
Proud auntie of Gareth. Marvellous. Yeah. That's great. That's us this week.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
You've been listening to Nicola and Judith Morgan. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.